Welcome back, you intriguing contradiction. Yes, you the one they've always tried to fold into a shape that wasn't yours. The one who can step into a room, say barely a word, and still command the atmosphere. You don't demand eyes on you. You don't chase approval. And yet, somehow, attention finds you anyway. There's a force in your presence that unsettles the ordinary. It's not loud. It's not flashy. It's quiet gravity. People notice before they can name it. Most never will. They try, though. You see it in the side glances, the micropauses, in conversation as you pass, in the subtle shift in tone when they address you. Something about you is different now, and they can't process it. So they reach for words, labels they hope will make sense of you. Cold, distant, dangerous, a gangster. Words meant to contain what they cannot. Words that allow them to pretend they understand. They won't confront you directly. That would require honesty, and honesty is hard. Instead, they whisper hallways, group chats, hushed corners. They talk about you like you're a rumor, like a warning, like an anomaly that must be explained before it forces them to question themselves. Here's the truth: they aren't unsettled by your actions. They're unsettled by what you don't do. You don't over-explain. You don't perform for approval. You don't react the way they expect. That absence of reaction shakes them more than any argument could. There was a time when you moved differently. You tried harder. You gave more than you had. You carried conversations, relationships, and other people's emotional burdens like they were yours alone to bear. You believed that being kind meant bending, that being good meant shrinking yourself to fit their comfort. And for a long time, you did. Then came the slow unraveling. Not a single dramatic moment, not a cinematic explosion, just a quiet accumulation of disappointments, betrayals, disrespect, broken promises, stacking one on top of the other. Until one day, without warning, without fanfare, you stopped reaching. Not out of spite, not in rebellion, just quiet, calm, polite, composed, still present, but no longer available. And that stillness, that's the moment they didn't see coming. That's the moment that changes everything. It wasn't anger that fueled you. It wasn't strategy. It was self-respect, finally louder than fear. It was your nervous system saying, enough. At first they assumed it temporary, that you'd return to smoothing chaos, explaining, giving understanding that wasn't earned. But days passed, weeks, and you didn't. Your calm became your new constant. Your absence became your signature. And that's when the labels started. Cold, distant, arrogant, dangerous, gangster. They didn't see your clarity. They didn't see your self-preservation. They saw what they needed to see. A version of you they could categorize. They turned your boundaries into flaws because it's safer than looking in the mirror. You didn't become ruthless. You became selective. You stopped giving everyone the same version of yourself. You realized not everyone deserves your depth, your access, your care. Some earn small talk, others barely a glance. And that quiet system of discretion, it terrifies people who live in chaos because it exposes the truth. Access to you has never been a right. It is a privilege. They misread your calm as intimidation, your restraint as arrogance, your silence as judgment. But you're none of those things. You're simply not managing them anymore. You're not shrinking to fit their expectations. You're standing in your own space, and that's enough to disturb the people who thrived on controlling you. Something in you shifted the way you move. Not faster, not louder, just steadier. Every step intentional, every word measured. You listen more than you speak, and when you speak, your words land with weight, because they're not hurried, not defensive, not performative. You allow silence to stretch. You observe. You notice reactions that others would miss. Discomfort, over-explanation, provocation, subtle attempts to draw a response. That absence of engagement illuminates more than confrontation ever could. There was a time when you carried the world's noise as your own. Now, the world carries itself while you stand still. You don't fill silence. You don't correct or rescue. You just let people reveal themselves, and you adjust your proximity accordingly. No announcements, no fights, just quiet recalibration. And that unsettles them more than any act of aggression. As the days stretched into weeks, and the weeks into months, something inside you quietly consolidated. What once scattered like sand in the wind now had weight, purpose, shape. You didn't seek attention, yet presence seemed to gravitate toward you. People began to notice, not for what you did, but for what you no longer offered. Your absence became a statement, louder than any argument, heavier than any demonstration of force. You aren't hardening your heart, you are fortifying it. There's a subtle difference, and it matters. A hardened heart repels everything indiscriminately. A fortified heart chooses carefully what it allows inside, and once you started doing that, the world began to respond differently. Those who had grown comfortable taking from your patience, your generosity, your understanding, suddenly found themselves at a loss. The scripts they had relied on, of your endless availability, no longer worked. The tools they wielded to manipulate, provoke, or extract control were rendered useless. You didn't need to prove anything. You weren't building dominance. You weren't striving to intimidate. You simply stood in alignment with yourself, and that alignment carried gravity. Quiet, steady gravity. People could sense it, even if they couldn't name it. It's a strange thing to be around someone who doesn't react the way the world expects. People misinterpret that stillness as arrogance, or coldness, or danger. Gangster, they whisper. They clutch at labels because your authenticity doesn't fit their categories. And when you stop performing, stop catering, stop explaining, the effect ripples outward. The air itself shifts. Conversations stall. People squirm. Silence becomes a mirror. You notice patterns, unsettling in their clarity. Some people only reach out when they need something. Others only engage when you show vulnerability. Some mistake familiarity for entitlement, assuming access is permanent. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You no longer overcompensate, overcommit, or over-explain. You no longer bend yourself into a shape that fits their expectations. That energy, the energy of constant performance, is exhausting. And you chose relief instead. This is the part they don't see. You didn't stop caring. You didn't stop being loyal or kind. You stopped giving loyal or kind. You stopped giving indiscriminately. You stopped giving what was never earned. Selectivity replaced overextension. Boundaries replaced chaos. And boundaries replaced chaos. And boundaries, more than anything, are a silent revolution. They force the world to adjust. They force people to confront the uncomfortable truth. Access to you is not a guarantee. It is granted through respect, awareness, and intention. Some tried to test you, subtle nudges, questions designed to provoke. The old tactics that used to elicit a response. You didn't bite. You didn't flinch. You didn't explain. And that refusal revealed more about them than any confrontation ever could. The discomfort on their faces, the faintly frantic energy of trying to pull you back into the roles they understood, those were signs, signals, truths that could no longer be ignored. And as you observed all this, something remarkable happened internally. You became lighter, not because the world changed, but because your relationship with it did. No longer responsible for managing other people's insecurities, no longer carrying burdens that weren't yours. You reclaimed space. Space for thought, space for clarity, space for the people who actually mattered, space to exist without justification. People might misread this as coldness or aloofness. They might call you arrogant or dangerous, even gangster. But that's not who you became. You didn't build walls, you built filters. You curated your world with intention. You stopped chasing connection that demanded compromise of your integrity. You stopped negotiating your peace. And in that quiet, something profound emerged. Discernment. Not judgment, not bitterness, just the ability to see clearly and act intentionally. You realized that the energy you used to pour into explanations, justifications, and approvals was wasted. Most conflict, you now understood, isn't about truth. It's about control, ego, projection. Once you recognized this, your participation became optional. You responded when it mattered. You withdrew when it didn't. You acted without apology because your self-respect outweighed their narratives. And that's when they really began to notice. Not at first. At first they assumed patience. They assumed a phase, a mood, a momentary withdrawal. But you didn't come back to the old patterns. Your calm, your grounded energy, your intentional silence, these became constants. And constants are threatening to people who relied on chaos for leverage. You didn't harden, you clarified, you didn't stop caring, you protected it. You didn't stop giving. You gave selectively, and in giving selectively, you became a mystery people couldn't decode, a presence they couldn't control, a force they couldn't predict, and that, above all, is why they whisper, why they label, why they call you gangster, not because of violence or swagger, but because you no longer exist on their terms. With time, that quiet discipline became second nature. It wasn't a performance, it was a posture and internal alignment that radiated outward. You didn't have to announce yourself, prove yourself, or justify yourself. Your presence carried weight simply because it was authentic, steady, and undistracted. People around you felt it instinctively. It disrupted their scripts. It forced them to confront a reality they weren't prepared for. You no longer played by the rules they wrote. You've learned the subtle power of non-reaction. It's astonishing how much influence lies in restraint. People will push, provoke, test, try to pull you back into their chaos. But when you refuse to engage, you reveal the limits of their control. That's what unsettles them most. Not anger, not confrontation, not rebellion. Just your calm, your quiet, your refusal to perform on demand. You became a living proof that energy cannot be extracted without consent, that attention is not owed, that patience is not infinite. Some people drift away quietly, and you let them. No resentment, no drama. Their presence no longer serves your equilibrium, so it fades. Others try louder, harder. They push, poke, manipulate, trying to see if the old version of you, eager to please, desperate to explain, ready to absorb their chaos, still exists beneath the surface. And when it doesn't, they feel exposed, vulnerable, uncomfortable. That discomfort is the truth shining through their projections, and you see it with clarity now. You've stopped apologizing for your absence. You've stopped explaining boundaries to people who have no interest in honoring them. You've stopped carrying burdens that were never yours. In their place, you've gained something priceless: clarity, discernment, and an unwavering sense of self. That clarity is what gives your energy shape. It's what allows you to move through life with intention rather than reaction, with presence rather than noise. Your calm doesn't seek to soothe them. Your silence doesn't need filling. You observe, measure, adjust. You notice who becomes uneasy when you hold space without reacting. You notice who overcomplicates, over-explains, overperforms just to regain control. And instead of being drawn into their chaos, you let them reveal themselves fully. And then, without spectacle, you adjust your proximity, your involvement, your attention. You give access only where it is deserved. This shift, the decision to protect your energy, changes the air. People who thrived on your previous availability now feel disoriented. They whisper, speculate, label. Cold, distant, dangerous, gangster. They seek to define you because your self-possession is incomprehensible to them. They can't locate the leverage they once had. And when they fail to manipulate, to provoke, to pull you into the drama, they grow anxious. They wonder if something is wrong with you. The truth is, nothing is wrong. You're simply aligned, and alignment is rare. You notice how differently you move through conversations now. You don't overcommit. You don't over-explain. You don't rush to fill silence or mend discomfort that isn't yours to fix. You respond intentionally, not impulsively. You withdraw when engagement threatens your clarity, and you enter fully when it serves your values. You've become the observer and the measured participant, choosing battles wisely, conserving your energy, and valuing your inner peace over external validation. Even your relationships have transformed. You've stopped offering emotional labor indiscriminately. Kindness is no longer a default. It's earned. Loyalty is no longer blind. It's tested and validated. Access is no longer inherited through history. It is granted through respect, awareness, and conscious choice. The people who truly belong in your life feel that difference. They rise to meet it. They recalibrate themselves to respect your boundaries, your presence, your intentionality. And those who cannot adjust naturally drift away, leaving a life less crowded, but more precise, more meaningful. You've learned that being selective doesn't make you cold. It makes you grounded. You've learned that restraint is not weakness, it's control. You've learned that silence is not emptiness, it's insight. And you've learned that people who can't handle your alignment aren't enemies. Their information, their discomfort, their projections, their attempts to categorize you, they all reveal truths about them, not about you. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, you notice a new kind of freedom emerging. Freedom from expectation, freedom from performance, freedom from chaos that isn't yours. You no longer chase validation, approval, or recognition. You no longer expend energy negotiating your worth. You exist in a state of self-trust, a deeply rooted, unshakable belief in your value that cannot be borrowed, manipulated, or diminished. That's what they can't process. They see your calm and interpret it as threat. They see your boundaries and call it coldness, say your selectivity and label it arrogance or danger. But in reality, you aren't threatening anyone. You aren't judging anyone. You aren't performing. You're simply standing inside yourself. And that stance, quiet, composed, unshakable, is more powerful than any confrontation, louder than any speech, heavier than any attempt to control you. And the most profound truth begins to surface. You didn't become something new. You returned to yourself. You shed what wasn't yours to carry. You stopped performing for the world's understanding. You stopped giving where your energy wasn't respected. And in that return to self, everything else, the whispers, the labels, the discomfort of others, became secondary. It became background noise, irrelevant to the clarity and power of your grounded presence. Now, you move through the world differently, not louder, not faster, not performatively, just steadier, rooted, centered. Every choice, every word, every gesture carries the weight of intention. You stopped negotiating your peace. You stopped justifying your boundaries. You stopped explaining your absence. And in that stillness, that grounded energy, the world responds differently. People notice. Some with respect, some with discomfort. Some try to test if you're still the version they once knew, eager, accommodating, pliable. But you don't revert. You respond selectively. You give when it aligns. You withdraw when it doesn't. And both actions are unashamed, unapologetic, undeniable. That's the part they can't process. That's why they call you cold, distant, even gangster. Not because you've changed into something harsh, but because you've recalibrated into something real, something unmanipulable, something inherently yours. You've learned that life isn't about pleasing everyone. It's about preserving yourself, about investing your energy where it matters, about being present for people and causes that reciprocate authenticity. That selective engagement isn't cruelty, it's self-respect. That clarity isn't arrogance, it's alignment. And that alignment radiates like gravity, drawing some closer and repelling others. Both outcomes are correct, both are lessons, both are freedom. The quiet authority you carry is unfamiliar to most, but it doesn't seek recognition. It doesn't require validation. It doesn't need applause. Its power lies in consistency, in steadfastness, in the refusal to participate in chaos that doesn't serve your integrity. And in that refusal, people begin to reveal themselves, often unintentionally. Their reactions, their discomfort, their projections, they all become data. And that data allows you to navigate the world with precision, protecting your energy and your peace. You realize that most conflict is never about truth. It's about control. People project their fears, insecurities, and expectations onto you. They attempt to draw reactions where none are required. They try to reclaim a version of you they were comfortable with, one that existed for their convenience. But when you don't provide it, when you don't perform, when you remain steady and measured, they feel powerless. And that is not your doing it. It's simply a consequence of standing firm in yourself. You stopped carrying burdens that weren't yours to carry. You stopped explaining when no explanation is necessary. You stopped defending when no defense is warranted. And in that space, something profound emerges. Clarity, stability, and a peace that doesn't depend on anyone else's perception. You've traded chaos for precision, noise for stillness, distraction for alignment. Some people drift away, some approach differently. Some rise to meet you where you are, others cannot. Both are fine, both are informative, both are liberation. You are no longer constrained by expectation, obligation, or the misinterpretations of others. You are constrained only by your own standards, your own integrity, your own inner compass. Your kindness is no longer a default. Your loyalty is no longer blind. Your patience is no longer boundless. And because these things are no longer they carry power. They carry intention. They carry truth. And people feel it, even if they can't name it. You didn't become hard. You became precise. You didn't close your heart. You fortified it. You didn't stop caring. You redirected it intentionally to people and causes worthy of your energy. That selectivity unsettles those who thrived on access without respect. That clarity terrifies those who relied on your compliance. That self-possession cannot be controlled, manipulated, or diminished. You move differently now. Every step, every word, every glance communicates stability without effort. Every boundary communicates respect without aggression. Every silence communicates insight without judgment. And in that presence, people are forced to confront what they cannot control. You. The real you. The self-directed, grounded, unshakable you. And that is why they whisper, why they label, why they murmur, gangster, as if that word could capture the truth. The truth is, you are not dangerous because of what you do. You are dangerous because of what you refuse to do. You refuse to bend to expectation. You refuse to shrink to comfort them. You refuse to perform at the cost of your integrity. You refuse to chase validation, and that refusal, that quiet, steadfast refusal, carries more weight than any threat ever could. This is the foundation of your power, alignment, the peace of self-possession, the gravity of intentional living. You don't need to be the loudest, the flashiest, the most visible. You only need to be yourself, and in being yourself, fully, completely, without apology or compromise, you've changed the air. You've recalibrated the space around you. You've rewritten the rules of engagement. You've become the presence people can't quite name, can't quite control, and can't quite process. You didn't become something else. You returned to yourself. And in that return lies freedom, clarity, and power beyond measure. And that, above all, is why they call you a gangster.